Hello. I am back to do the second stage of my journal, and I have done some prep work and I'm going to explain what I have done. So I have 5 signatures for my journal. 1, 3 and 5 are going to be exactly as I'm doing here, and then 2 and 4 will be a variation of it, but I've done the same method for each signature. So what I've done is I have cut 3 pieces of trim. I've got this green one, an ivory one here, and I've got a kind of pom-pom similar, it's actually quite flat, but another piece of trim here. What I've done is I've just gone in a few pages to this piece here, and I've attached, I'm going to take this part of the signature out and leave it like that. I've attached a piece of trim to both sides of this. So fairly close to the front and the end, we're going to have a piece of trim. And then I've taken a plain page just off the centre. So this is the centre, and I've put a piece of trim here. So I've got 3 pieces of trim in this signature, and there are 3 signatures with exactly the same trim in a very similar place. So what I need to do is I've clipped them in so I know where I want to put them. Line my pages up in my signature. I'm going to grab my glue. You could use Pritt stick. And I'm just going to slightly overhang that over the edge of my page. Push that down. Just hold that for a second. And I'm just going to flip that over and make sure it's roughly even on the other side. So I like that. I'm just going to go to my next piece of trim. Line my pages up. A little bit of glue. Same again. Now I'm going to sew all of my trim. If you're not going to sew, then what I would suggest is you use a little bit more glue to make sure it's really well adhered to your page. But because I am going to sew, I know the stitching is going to hold this in place. Okay, so we've got a piece of trim towards the front and the back, and then a piece of trim near the centre. Just a little piece of, oh. So trim that. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew both of these. Okay, so this one is sewn, and now what I'm going to do is grab my scissors. I'm going to trim. So that's my first 2 pieces of trim stitched in, and I've just popped a tiny piece of glue at the top here just to keep that secure. Then I'm going to put the rest of my signature back into place. Make sure I have it the right way up. That's the centre page. So just going to move that across, and now I'm going to sew this bit in, and then I'll show you what else I've done. Okay, so on the first and I think the 4th signature, I've just picked 2. What I've done is I've stitched in a large piece of lace on this page as well. So I've got a large pocket here. That is how I'm working out where to put my trim on each signature. So you can see it's fairly evenly spaced between the signature, and it will also be fairly evenly spaced between all of the other signatures. So I'll show you the others now. So those are all done, and this one, and this one, as you can see, these 3 all have this same trim. Okay, so this one, signature 2 and signature 4, again I've done the same, but this time I've used a piece of red, I've used an ivory, and then on this page at the bottom I've used the beaded trim. So that doesn't have 3 pieces of trim on the side, it has one of them at the bottom. So those all have trim, as you can see, and I haven't done any ruffles, so it's quite flat, and we've got it. That's the view from the bottom, and that's the view from the side. And for me, that's a perfect amount of trim. I just had a major panic because what I'd done is I'd managed to fold a couple of my pages. So if we say this page here, when I folded my pages, I had them the wrong way round in one of these books, and I had a major panic. But just be mindful that you're folding your pages the right way into your signature. But I'm happy with how that looks at the moment, and the bottom as well. So the next thing I'm going to do is make a few extra pockets that we can put into the journal. So nice and simple. I'm going to start with an envelope, and I'm going to make 2 pockets out of this one envelope. So I'm going to start by just gluing this together. I'm not doing anything overcomplicated. I'm going to have to put this journal together in a very simple way. We've got an envelope that's now closed up, and what I'm going to do is take my ruler and my knife, and it doesn't necessarily matter if they're the same size, similar sizes, different sizes. Put it on an angle and cut that envelope in half. So we now have 2 pockets, and we can have them facing that way or this way. We're going to cover them, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to work on this pocket first, and I want my bird on the pocket. So I'm just going to line that up. I can see he is going to fit on the pocket, and I'm just going to put a little line there. And what I'm going to do is just fold that over and make a crease. Okay, now I'm going to fold that back the other way. So I'm going to take my glue, and if you want some more ideas for pockets, check out Gail Agostinelli. I think she's done 2 videos recently where she has done some pocket ideas, and obviously these will work for any papers. This is a very simple pocket. I'm just going to line that up. So I'm going to line up my knife with the edge of my pocket. We need to make sure we're not actually cutting the pocket, because that would end in disaster. Cut that. I mean, you could fold this over, you could make this a hinge if you wanted to. I'm going to do that on one of my other pockets, and I'll show you that shortly. So we now have a little bird pocket. Just take a little notch out of there just to make that, so you can clearly see that's a pocket. And I'm going to ink the edge. So, I mean, that you could leave it as basic as that, but we do now have a little pocket here. And then here we've got the rest of this if we wanted to use that. I think I'm going to use it from about here. Okay, so now we have 2 very basic pockets. I'm going to decorate these up a little bit, and I'm going to show you a couple that I've already done. So these were done in exactly the same way. So this one, I've just added a piece of lace at the bottom and stitched around. And this one, I've stitched at the sides, but I've left that. So if you wanted to use the pocket a little bit further up the page, it could be used as a belly band. So I'm just going to trim those extra bits off. And what I'm going to do now is just decorate these 2 pockets as well. Okay, so those are those two pockets. So I now have 4 envelope pockets. Envelope pocket, I'm going to do a little bit differently. So I've got a full page here. I'm just going to very quickly glue this envelope closed. I'm just going to trim a small amount off the bottom of this page. I don't want to do too much more because I want to make sure I can show you how I'm going to start constructing my cover today. That's fine. I'm not going to cut the top just for a moment. I'm just going to put some glue. Now I'm going to lay this down, but I'm going to leave a little edge there. That's glued nicely. And I'm going to fold this over like that, and then I'm going to fold it back on itself. I'm going to fold this over my envelope. I'll glue this side, put the glue around the edge, and then burnish that down. So now I'm going to just trim off that piece there, but being very careful I don't cut my envelope, and I'm just going to trim the top off. Okay, so this time I've actually got a flap here. Add it to my journal and use that as a hinge so it can be a folding page. So just pop that out and ink. Okay. So I'm not going to finish this one now, but I'll show you the other one that I have made. So this one I've added some trim and it folds over so it's on both sides. But we have a pocket that can be hinged into our journal. So I will do the same on that one. And now we need to look at our covers. I have started. I've done one cover. So this will be my front cover. I took one of the signatures and laid it down over my cover and left a little bit of gap at the top and the bottom. Took a pencil and I drew a little mark, and then I cut my cover down to size. So you can see this is the size of my cover. Now what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to line my covers up. Can't find my pencil. I'm just going to draw a line. It's easy to work on one and then work on the second one. Take my ruler and then with my sharp knife just do small cuts until I have gone all the way through my cover. Once I've got this raw edge, I'm going to take a sanding block and just sand the edges and gently across that raw edge. And then you can take any white glue and just run a small amount of white glue along that raw edge, and then just give that a wipe gently across that raw edge, and that will just seal that. It's not going to give it a perfect edge, but it is going to seal it. And what I'm going to do on the edge of these is I'm going to just give it a little bit of rub and buff all the way around, and it will blend that in. This is going to be the bottom of my journal. Here are my signatures, and we're going to have, you could do any type of spine. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do mine, but that's how our book is going to look. Now, so now I have my signatures and my covers. I'm just going to use my ruler and decide what size I want my spine to be. And I think I need this to be 2.5 inches. I could probably do 2, I could probably do 2, but I want to put things in this journal, so I'm going to go for a 2.5 inch spine. I've got some, this is 100 micron bookboard. You can use the back of a notepad, you can use cereal boxes that's been doubled up. You don't have to use actual bookboard for this. So let's use my ruler, grab my pen, put that at 2.5 inches. And I'm going to put a little mark there. So I'm going to line my bookboard up on a straight line on my cutting board, and I'm going to put my mark on one of the vertical lines too. I'm going to use my long ruler and line that up. Okay, now I'm going to cut. I'm going to line that up. And I'm going to cut myself a second piece. And now hopefully these 2 pieces will be exactly the same size. It's still quite flexible. It's not really thick. So back in with our book cover. And before I go any further, what I want to do is go round the edge with my rub and buff. I'm going to put a little bit on my board. I'm going to grab a brush and just do the edge. And I just need to leave that aside to dry. I'll do the second one. Okay, I'm not worried about having a little bit of gold on my covers. That's absolutely fine. Right. So the rub and buff needs to dry, but what I'm going to do is just line that up with my covers. Take my ruler, line that up with my front and back cover. Take my pen, draw the line, cut this to the right height. Then I'm going to take my second piece, draw my line, and now I have 2 pieces exactly the length I need. Now one piece is going to be my spine, and what I have also done is cut myself a little square or a little piece of, this is book cloth, and I've picked this green. You don't have to use a book cloth. You can use a fabric or you can use a paper of your choice. Next thing I will be doing is adding one of the spine pieces to the book cloth, and then making sure the book cloth is the correct size and attaching that to my covers. But I do want that rub and buff to dry before I move on, and I'm just going to take a little break and I'll be back very soon. Right, I've cut my book cloth down a little bit further, and what I've done is folded it at the top and put a crease, folded it at the bottom and put a crease, and used my ruler to join that up. So I've got a line roughly down the centre of my book cloth, as long as it's the right height and you've got enough width. So my spine is 2.5 inches. I've made sure I've got at least 1 inch either side. So this is 2.5 inches. So I'm going to take my ruler and pen, and I'm going to mark at 1 1/4, and I've already done this on another one. I'm going to mark it at 1 1/4 because I had to put my head under the camera, and then I'm going to join those lines up, and it gives me this. So this line is down the centre. It's down the centre of my spine. This piece I'm going to put aside. I need that later. This I'm going to turn over, take my, and I find this the easiest, by far the easiest way of making sure I have even book cloth. Right, now I'm going to take, you need to use whatever glue you are confident with. So I'm going to use my EVA, which is a bookbinding glue, just to make life a little bit easier. I'm just going to put a little bit of tape just to hold this down. Take my spine and coat that. Like I said, you can use any glue that you are confident with. This is a reasonably fast drying time. So I'm going to turn this over and basically make sure I've got enough top and bottom, and I'm just going to line up my lines. Now, like I said, this is just how I like to do it. I'll grab a wipe and just remove that excess for now. Wrap my brush. Okay, so I'm going to grab my metal ruler and I'm going to push it against this spine, and I know this is going to give me roughly enough space. I'm going to cut that piece of book cloth off. You can use any straight edge that you feel is going to give you enough of an overhang. I just know that this particular ruler is going to give me an okay edge. You don't want to glue your covers too close to your spine. You need to have a little bit of gap when the book closes. You need to have that. So what we need to do is make sure we've got an even gap down here. Now I've got this rather weird contraption, and it's basically a vintage ruler which has a nice thickness to it, but I've also got a piece of book board attached to it. I've got a clip holding it in place, and what I'm going to do is line my ruler up with the bottom of the spine, and then I'm going to grab my brush and glue my book cloth. Now I've got a piece of cardstock under here just to make sure I don't get glue on anything else. And don't worry, I will wipe this clean. I'm going to butt my ruler or my contraption against my spine, and then I'm going to put my book cover against that, and making sure everything is nice and tight. So I've got my spine, my guide or my gap, then my book cover, and I'm using this ruler to make sure the covers are lined up. And then we'll take that out, and then we need to do this side. So the same again. I'm going to add my glue, whatever glue you're using, and don't worry too much. There is plenty of opportunity for us to kind of play with this a little bit if we need to. So I'm going to put my guide in, and then I'm going to put my cover in. And at this stage, if you wanted, we just wipe that spare glue from inside there. I'm going to turn my cover over, remove my card, and just make sure that's nicely pressed. And at this point, if I need to, I can add a little bit more glue. I'm going to use a smaller brush this time. Okay, so we're making sure that's nicely pushed down into place. And I'm going to use this as, again, just to keep my book cloth nice and clean. Now, obviously this is going to be folded in. Okay, this needs a good time to dry. But what we will do is we will go in here and just put our creases in. And you can see that cover is now really starting to take shape. Right, so I'm going to leave it there and then we'll come back and finish this off. It's the next day and I'm back just to finish off this cover. I'm actually going to use Fabri-Tac for this last bit. So I'm going to use Fabri-Tac for this last bit, and I'm going to just glue along the edge of my cover, making sure I've got the edges. That's the most important thing. Add extra glue here. So what I'm going to do is lift the cover and fold it back on itself, so we get a neat edge, and then just burnish this down. And Fabri-Tac is going to grab quite quickly, and then of course we're going to spin it round and do the same on the other end. Right, so that is all glued, and I think that's a lovely little spine. Nice book. It's going to be quite big. So the next thing I'm going to do is do my covers. So I've cut my covers down, and these will fit onto my front and back like this. So they need a bit of an ink. So with my book, I want mine to be quite as though it could be a book on the bookshelf. So I'm not going to be doing too much to my cover. I might make a dangle for the spine and possibly a book plate. I'm not sure. That's something I'm going to be thinking about. Right, now what I don't want to do is risk getting glue everywhere. So again, I'm going to use Fabri-Tac. This is a fabric kind of cover on this book, so I'm going to use Fabri-Tac. So that's the front cover on, and now I'm going to do the back. Okay, so that is our book cover. Let's pop the signatures in and see how that's going to look. So that's the signatures in our book. That's what it's going to look like. Hope you found this useful. I know it is a very, very basic construction. So the next video, we will be sewing the signatures in. I hope to create a template for you in case you have used a 2.5 inch spine. I will be doing an A4 and a US version. So you'll be able to print that and you'll have your template to sew your signatures in. I will be back with the next video probably later this week. I will see you all really soon. Bye.